Welcome to our study on the book of Romans. This is Sonship Orientation. This is sessions 71 and 72. One of the things that we were looking at in our last session was when you, for the first time, become a threat and the adversary begins to take notice of you. Now, we did look at that at the end of that last session. And that's when you are told to cast off the works of darkness and to put on the armor of light. Now, I just want to show you that, and so let's take a look at Romans chapter 13, verse 12. The night is far. By the way, does anybody remember what decision-making skill are you being taught when you get to Romans 13, 12? Remember the four skills? Wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. Which skill is this? Judgment. 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 If I wrote something different in the notes, I wrote it wrong. Because these last two skills are the time when your sonship really begins to shine. You really now show that you're getting something. Remember, before we read, remember what justice was about? Justice is determining what's right and what's wrong based on someone's norms and standards. You're going to learn God's norms and standards. So once He sets out a norm of standard of what's good and what's evil, it doesn't take a whole lot to figure that out, right? Okay, but judgment is a little different. Judgment is when you have two or three things you can decide on and none of them are considered to be wrong. But you do know that out of the, say, three choices you can make, one of them has to be better than the others. And so judgment gives you ability to discern between this, because let's face it, once you understand the norms and standards, justice is a pretty much given. But when you get here, you really are now beginning to exhibit a skill that takes some, it takes some instruction to be able to do that and to figure that out. Okay, now let's go to read this. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness. This is the first time you're told anything like this in the book of Romans. And let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying. What you have here is the policy of evil, because it is the works of darkness. But look what it's utilizing. This list at the end, it says not in rioting, drunkenness, chambering, wanton, strife, envy. Those are not religious things. What are those? Those are things of the world. So the very first attack that you get as you're being instructed in godly judgment is that you're going to get attacked by the policy of evil, but it's going to utilize the world, things of the world. That list is totally of the world. So it's going to kind of disguise itself and act like it's the world that's coming against you. By the way, this assembly is going to suffer that attack. Remember I talked about when we get to Romans 13, some troublemaker like Gloria will come in the back door and declare, hey, today's the day. And then, and this is the temptation that will befall us. That we'll be tempted to be moved by these kinds of things. Now, when you successfully do what verse 12 says and cast that off, you rebuff that attack, that's when the policy of evil is no longer going to disguise itself under the world. It's almost like, okay, the gloves are coming off and now we're going to war. And the policy of evil is now going to turn its attention on you because you, and by the way, if you succumb to that attack, policy of evil just, okay, you're done deal. But it's when you cast off those works of darkness, you now become an issue that you have to be dealt with. And so the policy of evil is going to try to do something with you, and that is to sanctify you. In other words, what is your sanctified life? It's how you live for God on a day-to-day basis. The goal of the policy of evil is to get you away from your sanctified life. And what's the capstone of your sanctification? Your sonship. That you're sons of God. And that's exactly what this is designed to do, is to get you to get away from your sonship. Now, I want to show you the change in tactics. So let's go Romans chapter 16 and verse 17. Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which you have learned, and avoid them. For they that are such serve not our Lord Jesus Christ, but their own belly, and by good words and fair speeches deceive the hearts of the simple. You can see that a simple son is going to come under this. So you know what? You got that first attack when you were here. When you finish this up, you now become a simple son. And the policy of evil is going to do a change in tactics, and it's given to you right here. The policy of evil is now going to use men standing at pulpits using this book. And I'm not even talking about those other I'm talking about this book. They're going to use even, well, if there's anybody left doing that, but if they're going to use this book, and they're going to teach you a doctrine contrary to that which you have learned. Part of that doctrine is going to be like this. This whole deal of rightly dividing the Word, they're going to tell you is wrong. The idea that you're not supposed to go over to the books of Hebrews and Peter and James and get your doctrine, they're going to tell you that's wrong. When we say we're not going to get our doctrine out of Israel's program, they're going to tell you that's wrong. And that's the attack now that's going to begin to come. Now there's something more about that you'll need to see, but I want you to see the way this is going to get done. And let's go back to Israel's program where he talks about the evil man, the strange woman, and look at it. That they may keep thee, this is talking about the words of wisdom, that they may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which, here it comes, flattereth with her words. What is flattery? Okay, Gloria says makes you feel good. What's the difference between flattery and praise? One's alive. Okay, but Bob says flattery is insincere. Let me give you another aspect to this. Flattery is giving you credit for something you have no control over. Praise is giving you credit for something you do. Are your eyes blue, Ruby? Are they blue? Yeah. I'm looking from here, and there's kind of a shadow. Okay. If I were to say to Ruby, oh, you know what, you have such wonderful blue eyes, that wouldn't be a bad thing to say. But if I'm trying to really act like she's something because she has blue eyes, guess what? You're not wearing blue contacts, are you? Okay, I'm just making sure. She has no control over that. Who gave her those blue eyes? God did. See? Oh, you have such pretty hair. Okay. All right, you might take care of it, but you know, that's a God thing. But see, when a little girl, when her parents come in, they say, sit down at the piano and play this for everybody, and she sits down and she plays now what she's learned, you know what? You can praise her for the work that it took to be able to do that. To think you're praising her for things that she has no control over, that's not praise, that's a flattery. Now, there is an insincere praise. Yes? Saying good things about you just to get an inroad somehow. This woman flattereth with her words, and look, with her much fair speech. You understand, nobody's going to come in here and say, you guys are doing this all wrong, and anybody that's in here, you're just an idiot. They're never going to do that. You know what? That should have been the word. Clinton said it sounds like people on the DV are going, what? Because they can't hear what you're saying. Clinton says it sounds like a politician. Because a politician loves to tell everybody what they think, right? What they want to hear, right? And that way, you know, no one gets their feathers ruffled. Well, look, These are folks that are going to come in and they're going to go, oh, you know what? I just think this is just great. Y'all are doing wonderfully. I just think y'all are doing so good, and what you're engaged in is great. And then there's going to come that English word of logic. But, and you know what but is? It's a corner word. It's going to take you off in a different direction. You just always have to be careful about that. Much fair speech. By the way, don't underestimate this. Do not, right now we're looking at it and you're going, I will never fall for that. Do not underestimate. I'm not saying you'll fall. I'm saying don't underestimate it. Caused him to yield, with her much fair speech, she caused him to yield, and with the flattering of her lips, she forced him. You want me to tell you how this gets done in some places? Someone comes in, and they go with the flow, and they become a part of it, and then they become, I'm not trying to be ugly now, you understand, they become a big giver. And then once that's gotten established, then they say this, you know, this is really good what we're doing, but, and now the implication is, we're going to lose all the benefits that they brought to the table if we don't go along this way. Have you ever? I've seen that happen in churches. I've seen that happen.
You're looking at me?
No, I'm not. No. Okay, I didn't want to say it. Bertha's trying to force us to. No, right. No. I'm just looking at everybody. You know the old saying, when you throw a rock in a group of dogs, the one that hollers is the one that got hit. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. No, you know what? I look at your faces. I try to look at everybody. I'm not really looking at you. But you know what I find? I find that my face goes back to people that I'm comfortable with. Now, if you're saying, well, you never look at me, well, because I don't like you. No, that's not it. That's not it. But I do. I find myself looking at folks, I don't know, my eyes just kind of fastened somewhere, because y'all have friendly faces. Look, you don't know what it's like to preach in a place where everybody's giving you that look like they just can't wait to stone you when it's over. Okay. This is the work of the policy of evil. And it's very deceptive. It's very subtle, and it comes in to trip you up. And again, it's going to utilize the things of the world. So we just need to be aware of that. So back to Romans 16, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine. To the doctrine. That's the thing that we have to be sure and preserve. All right. Verse 20. By the way, here's another reason you know this is the policy of evil, not just the works of darkness. But look, following these verses, 17, 18, 19, 20, I want to show you the end of it. Look at verse 20. And the God of peace shall bruise Satan under your feet shortly. Now you see there really is something that Satan himself is involved in. And you're going to be given the ability to see that happen, to bruise Satan under your feet, to see that attempt on his part to go away and to not be successful. And by the way, and that's when that attack is no longer the attack of this world. Okay, now in Proverbs chapter 8 and 9, you have the final exhortations to the education, because after chapter 9, you're going to start doctrine. And so this is a son who's pretty well advanced in the curriculum. And wisdom, because wisdom is now living in the inner man of the son, wisdom is going to take on like she's doing the talking. Because she really is. She's going to be in you. So let's take a look. I want you to see this beginning in Proverbs chapter 9. You know, I should say something before we read that. Let me do this. As you're coming along through your sonship here, and you're coming through this education, it is here that you get the attack of the policy of evil utilizing the world. If you rebuff that attack, then that thing is going to change. And now a simple son is going to come under the attack of the policy of evil, but it's going to come now in a different form. And I told you it was to get you away from your sonship, and indeed it is. But even here in these stages, you're going to begin in the very small amount that it is, you're going to begin to encounter the sufferings of Christ. That is going to be in addition to something you were suffering this whole time, even before this time, from the day you came into the world. And that is the sufferings of this present time. The sufferings of this present time. You know, that ranges everything from I got sick to I was in an accident to, you know, I did something stupid and this is what happened, or, you know what, this was out of my control and someone else did something, and that's the sufferings of this present time. Everybody's going through that. That has nothing to do with your sonship. You understand that? You don't even have to be saved, and you're going to go through the sufferings of this present time. Which is, by the way, explains why you can love the Lord, you can really want to serve God, you can actually dedicate your life to that and go through some tremendous suffering in this world. While here's this other guy over here that couldn't give God the time of day, and he doesn't have near the problems you have. It is just part of living in a fallen world, and the things happened the way they happened. No one's rewarding him and punishing you. But this is directly related to your sonship. This is a different kind of suffering. In this, and when I put it up here, I'm not trying to scare you with it because it's not a full-blown thing. Don't get to thinking that right here, as you're just, winding up your education to become a simple son, that Satan has pulled his big guns on you and boom, boom, and now you're, somebody went squirrel hunting with a bazooka. That's not what this is. But it is the beginnings of the sufferings that you will do for Christ. I'm hoping that at this point, I haven't made that to be such a big deal that I need to turn around and spend any time at all saying to you, don't let that bother you, because even in those beginning stages, there is something that is being done in you that is way better than what you're suffering in those sufferings. And the Bible itself will bring us to that subject matter. Okay, now, Proverbs 9:1, that's where I really wanted to go with this. Wisdom hath builded her house, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars, she hath killed her beast, she hath mingled her wine, she hath also furnished her table. Now, in the book of Proverbs, none of this is just none of this is said for no reason. But I'm going to be honest with you and tell you there's some things up here I'm not sure I can accurately identify. If you were to say to me, for instance, what are those 7 pillars? Not sure I have that nailed down. But the part I am after for right now, hopefully one day that'll happen, but you understand at Proverbs 9:1, you know where this exhortation applies in the sonship curriculum? Not until you're over becoming a man of understanding. This is the very end. So maybe I'm not supposed to be able to get all of that yet, because I'm certainly not over there. So she hath killed her beast, she hath mingled her wine, she hath also furnished her table, she hath sent forth her maidens, she crieth upon the highest places of the city, whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. I'm showing you this for a reason. Very important reason. Now watch this carefully, and I need you to have this in your mind. We've been looking at wisdom doing the talking here. Wisdom is the back. Wisdom builded her house. She's hewn out her 7 pillars. She's furnished her table. She's simple, and she crieth this. Here's what she cries. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. For as to him that wanteth understanding, she said, come eat of my bread, drink of the wine I've made, forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. Now there's a reason I'm showing you this. And to show you, what I want to do is, I want to drop you down now to verse 13, and we're going to read this passage. Now bear in mind, this is for an advanced son. Take a look. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knoweth nothing. Now, just guessing, who do you think the foolish woman is? The strange woman. Right. Now, I want you to notice, look at her actions. For she sitteth at the door of her house on a seat in the high places of the city to call passengers who go right on their ways. Here's what she says. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him. Does anybody recognize anything yet? She is using the exact same words that wisdom used. It's just going to get tweaked a little. Let me give you the next one. Look at verse 4. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, there's wisdom. Let me back you up. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, that's identical. A call is going to be made between the strange woman that sounds just like godly wisdom. Now, look at verse 5. Here's what wisdom says. Come eat of my bread and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Now let's go to the foolish woman. Stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Now you see a little bit of a change. But do you notice all the elements are still there? It's still bread. It's still something to eat. Still something to drink. It's all there. It's just now she's changed that just a little bit. And that's the subtle change that's going to be engaged by the policy of evil as it gets ready now to deceive the simple. That's the attack that's going to come from this book to try to change very subtly the things that are given to you here. Okay. Let me catch up in my notes with where we are. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. Paul's going to talk to Timothy about this very thing. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. And when he talks about those last days, he's not talking about the last days of Israel's program. He's talking about the last days in this dispensation of grace. I want you to notice something else. When Paul's talking to Timothy, he's talking to Timothy about things that are going to be taking place in churches among saints. He is not talking about the world here. And so I want to continue to read this passage. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. That's not a description of the world. That's a description of saved people. And that's not a description of people who are claiming to be saved. That's people who are. They have been justified unto eternal life, but this is how their sanctification has turned out. Now, you look at that, and that looks like a pretty bad list, and I'm not disagreeing with that, but I want you to look at how, we're going to continue to go through this list and look at their actions, how they're described. Without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. That wouldn't be a big deal if it was the world, but if that's where the church is going to wind up, that is a big deal. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof, from such turn away. These are folks that have a form of godliness, but it's not the right form. They're going to tell you you're not going to become godly by going through a curriculum that's going to effectually work to produce godliness. They're going to tell you that's going to get it produced another way, and they're going to put that form forward, and they're going to deny the power of this book to produce that in you. They're going to deny the power of this book to do it, which is why churches by and large get away from the Bible more and more and more. There are some places, and I don't keep up with everything, I really don't, but there are some places that they would bring in a guy and he would claim to be a prophet, and he would look around the auditorium and he would make prophecies concerning everybody that was in the auditorium. And he would, he'd look at Dakota and he would say, something's going to happen that's going to change your life this year, and you're going to get a job doing such and such. And he'd look at Ruby and you'd say, you're going to come into, I'm just making it up, come into a bunch of money and, and all like that. And he's going to look at Randall and say, you're going to lose your hair, and then he's going to, ha, 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 ha. And, he's just going to look around, and he's going to, and he says all that kind of stuff. And you know what happened to those folks? They quit bringing their Bibles. They began to bring notebooks and just write down the prophecies that were given to them, so that then they could go around looking to see if anything that was said that would match up with what it was, and then that way they could, and that got everybody away from the Word. There's no effectual working going on there. There's no godliness in that. No one's learning to think like their father. No one's becoming a simple son. No one's able to utilize godly judgment or any of those. What we're engaged in, folks, I'm just trying to say it nicely. We are going to become the target of every other church that is not engaged in sonship. You are. You know what the world loves? Can you tell me one attribute of the world that is true wherever? The world loves conformity, doesn't it? The world loves for everybody to do it the same. And if anybody ever gets out of step, and the world kind of spotlights that, and ostracizes you for the purpose of making you get back in step. And I'm telling you that as long as you're engaged in this, when we really get over here, I'm talking about this, when you really get over here, you are going to be ostracized by everyone in town. I'm not talking about the town, I'm talking about the saved people. Now you may think you're just exaggerating that, but I'm not. I'm not. We're going to be looked at like we're the weird one. We're going to be the cult. Yeah, I know we always laugh about that. Yeah, okay, we're the cult. But whatever it has ever been in the past, it's going to be worse. And you know what that's for? That's for the purpose of shutting this down and making us be like everybody else. I'm just telling you that's coming. Look around this room. Not everybody will be able to endure that. I'm not saying that happily. I'm just saying for 100% of us to be able to go through that, that's going to be nothing short of just the most odds-defying thing you could ever imagine.
That's us.
Well, okay, that's okay. All right, that's okay. The back row is probably not going to be affected at all, okay? But, the normal people in the room. But I mean, really, that is going to be the deal. And if that affects you, is there going to be a doctrine, do you think, that's going to be given to you to help you with that? Yeah, there will. But I have to tell you, you're still going to go through that. You really are. And you're going to be frustrated because, can I just give you an example? Pam, can I use your illustration about you were telling folks you were moving down here? Pam is up in Granbury, and she does go to the study up in Glenrose, but you understand you're about a year ahead of them. And this time next year, you'll be 2 years ahead of them because they only meet half as many times as you do. So you're doubling them every time. Every month, you're getting further and further out ahead. Pam said, see, you think you're never going to get it? She knew in Glen Rose she would never get it. So Pam says, you know what, I don't want to wait. I want to get it. I want to be in the midst of an assembly that's doing this. I want to be there and be a part of that. So she's moving. She's already bought a home. So anyway, she's serious about it. So she's telling her friends, I'm moving to West Texas. Now for most people, that's enough for make them to ask why. And she says, well, you know what? I'm studying this sonship thing and I've got to get this. I've got to get my sonship done. I've got to get this. And here's what they say to her. Now this is great. I love this. I actually wrote this in your sermon for your sessions for next week. We won't do it this way. You'll hear me say it next week because I said I'd love to hear somebody finally say this. And then Pam comes along this week and actually says it to me. Here's what she said. She says, because I've got to get this sonship, I've got to get it done. And they said, well, if God's telling you to go, I guess you got to go. She said, God's not telling me. I'm making a decision. And they all went, what? And you know what? Now they're all convinced she's an idiot. Because God has to tell you. Oh my gosh! You mean you did something that God didn't tell you to do? Really, am I right? Yeah, God's leading you. She said, God's not leading me. I'm making a sonship decision. When you say that to most folks, you might have well said, I just anti-disestablishmentarianism. You should have just said that because then I'll be going like, ah. Yeah, I'm making a sonship decision. They have no clue what that is. But she's making a decision. Because in the next session, you're going to hear me say, I would love to hear, in fact, I said it in the framework of preachers, I would love to hear some preacher say, I'm making a decision to do this. But we preachers can't do anything. We can't preach unless we think God called us and we can point to when He did. We can't pastor a church unless we think God led us there. We can't create a sermon unless it came from Him. We can't do anything without He told us to do it. Like a little kid. We can't be adults. We got to be told what to do over and over and over and over. And you know what? If that's all you know, you don't have enough to make a decision on your own. So thank you, Pam, for having enough guts. Call it guts now. Later we'll call it something else. Enough guts to stand up and say what it is. By the way, all those guys that have been doing all of that, they've been doing what they've been deciding anyway. They've just found a way to convince themselves, a way to pin it on God. It's always interesting to me as a guy said, God led me to this church. This is the church God wants me to be at, and I know I'm here. And 2 weeks later, he's looking for another church. I thought God led you to that church. Well, it's just deacons are a bunch of jerks. Well, what, God didn't know that when He led you there? We just do it. Then we want to pin it on somebody. You know what God is looking for? Sons that can make a decision and take responsibility for their decision. Yes? Okay. You're getting it? By the way, I wouldn't go out of here and say that to anybody. I mean, look at those bruises on Pam. You'll see what I'm saying. Teresa?
I always said God led me here. I've been here several years. I guess I fit.
Yeah, you fit right in. I tell you what. You know, I know we feel that way. I mean, you know. But you know what? Here's the thing. You ever realize how your whole life could change if one little thing had been different? Mm-hmm. If I'd gone to school at a different school, you know. Or if my parents, if we hadn't gone to church at the church I went to, they would not have influenced me to go to the school that I went to, and I wouldn't have been influenced then to find the friends that I met, which then connected me to others. I mean, you know, really, I mean, there's a whole connection between all of that. But can you not say with me that you're going to make some sonship decisions and your Father's not going to have to tell you what to do? Yeah, sure. We better. Because you know what He's going to do? He's going to give you all the skills to do it. Yes? Hey, I was writing to, I don't tell illustrations much, so let me do this one, then we'll quit. I was writing to one of the men that study in the Bible Institute. He's up in North Texas. You know, there used to be 5 preachers I had a phone conversation with on Sunday nights when I'd get home, and we would Skype. We'd get on the internet and we'd do this live talk, and I'm kind of training them. They're going to be ordained at the end of this year. And so I was kind of training them, you know. They're going through sonship, but I can't shortcut their sonship. But there's some other things they need to understand, so we're going through those things. And then I thought, you know what, this is too restricting. I can't do on this staring at the computer screen, you know, listening to all these different voices, and then we had guys in different places. It was just hard. So what I do now is I tape a DVD at home, at the studio at home, that's just for them, and then we send it to them. And then and that way I can use the whiteboard and stuff. I can really teach them something. And so then the guy, my buddy up in Nebraska, whom you'll all meet in July of this year, is going to come down because we're going to license him into the ministry right here when they come in this summer. And he's following that study along, and he wants to be ordained at the end of the year. So I thought, well, if we're going to ordain you, it'd be nice for you to be licensed. I guess we better do that. So he's going to come in this summer, and we're going to have a licensing ceremony this summer for him. And so he's studying along with us. And then we got the guy out in Florida, you know, contacted us, been following along on the website. Now he's getting those studies, you know. Well, there's another guy in North Texas, and I thought, you know what, maybe I should ask, because we licensed him. We just happened to do it up in North Texas because that's where he is. And so I contacted him and said, you know, are you interested in working toward ordination and doing this deal? And he wrote me back and he said, yeah. Yeah, I want the stuff, absolutely. So my point, I got caught up in telling you the story, and now I'm trying to think of why I told you that story. Mark Bame is the guy in Nebraska. I told you that story because I was making a point about where we were in this. It will come to me at the break. I can't believe that. I must have really enjoyed telling you that story because I really got caught up in it. Well, whatever it was we were talking about just before, apply this story to that. I know none of you, all of you are doing the same thing. What was that? Well, that was a story and a half, wasn't it? We don't even remember what we were talking about. I'll figure it out. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Right. We used to do that, and then it kind of enlarged, the group kind of enlarged, and we were doing that. But I was telling you because evidently it was something that I was saying to them. I was going to make a point about that. Oh, I just can't. Yeah. And we have been doing that. In fact, the DVD that I'll create tomorrow will be number 6 or 7. 7?
No, 6.
6. We do it every other week. So we've only been doing this for about 12 weeks now. So I don't know. I'll tell you after we come back from the break. We'll call it a